Hello humans, and welcome back to another Engage video. Last night they surprised us with the DLC dropping, so here I am today having gotten all the details ready for you so you can decide whether or not it's worth buying, as well as a general overview for these emblems and how to use them. Also, massive shout out to my buddy Quarterlini. He did this thumbnail so fast I didn't even have my script started yet, so please do me a favor and show him some love on his Twitter and YouTube. He really deserves it and has been working extremely hard to help out with the thumbnails. I'll leave links to everything on screen in the description below, so I hope to see a big turnout for him. Also, make sure to like and subscribe, because I've been working non-stop since the DLC reveal, and it helps my morale, it helps keep me going. So yeah, like and subscribe, leave a comment, tell me what you think. Alright, intro over, time to dive into the new DLC emblems. I'm going to start by covering them all one by one, and we'll talk about every detail from their stat boosts, their passives, their type variations, the weapons, the emblem attacks, all the way to who I think the best sort of combinations for them are, and some nice ways to use them. We have 3 new bracelets to play with: Hector, Soren, and Camilla. So let's do my main man Hector first. He's probably my favorite lord, and I was really excited to see him in the game. Hector is an absolute tank emblem bracelet. Well, he's a little bit more than that, but we'll talk about that down the line. At Bond 20, he gives +3 build, +4 attack, and +5 defense. In terms of these stats, he compares very closely to Ike, and they have identical stat boost, except Ike gives 7 HP instead of 3 build. Hector's got the usual total of 6 abilities. At level 1, he has Quick Riposte, which guarantees a follow-up if you're over 80% HP, which means you'll basically always double if your HP value is high enough. This is great on units who are super tanky, because they'll be able to get multiple rounds of attacking twice and potentially killing a ton of enemies in the process. At level 16 Bond, he upgrades to a higher version where the HP threshold is 60%, which is a lot more lenient and will give you more longevity. This is amazing, but for reasons I'll discuss later. At level 3, Hector gains the passive, Adaptability. Unlike Quick Riposte, this passive is pretty trash. It really does suck. After you get hit, you gain +2 to defense or resistance depending on what attack type you get hit by, and it lasts until the end of battle. On the surface, it seems okay until you read the fine print. Lasts until the end of battle, or until activated again. This means that when it's activated, it resets whatever bonus you already have, meaning that not only does it not stack, but the defense and resistance bonus will never be active at the same time. I don't know who thought this skill was a good idea, but it's so bad, and the upgraded version only gives +3 to defense or resistance, it's whack. At level 8, Hector gets another great skill called Heavy Attack. One of the biggest issues in this game is being weighted down by weapons, and well, this actually uses that negative to generate a positive, as it adds flat, unmitigated damage to each attack based on how weighed down you are. So if you're being weighed down by 2, you get an extra 2 damage per attack, up to a maximum of 5. This one doesn't upgrade, but it's still pretty good for those of you who want to use those ridiculous Roy or Ike engraves. At level 12, Hector gets Piercing Glare. This is an active skill that you have to select, and it allows you to consume 20% of your HP to make the tiles that are directly diagonal to you untraversable by enemy units. I thought this was completely useless at first, since it only lasts 1 turn, it wastes your HP and player phase, and it doesn't really prevent you from being attacked from range from other directions. But then I was having a discussion with my friend Roltaire on Discord, and he brought up a great point that this actually creates an artificial choke point instead to help protect your other units. And he's absolutely right. In a hallway that is 3 spaces wide, this effectively blocks the entire passage for a turn to help you stall for time. It's still not amazing, but I can definitely see the niche that it'll play. It also doesn't have an upgraded version, so what you see is what you get. When Hector engages, he gets 2 more abilities. The first is Impenetrable. This is really nice since it adds just a flat 30% bonus to your defense and resistance when the enemy initiates combat on your 3 to 4 turns while you're engaged. However, it's a double-edged sword, and it is really only good on tanks because rather than being a flat boost like Ike's Resolve, which gives you +7s, this scales off your base, meaning that the lower your base defense and resistance, the less of a boost you're getting. I'll talk about the exact way this calculates later because we did a little bit more testing. It's not as straightforward as this seems, but just keep this in mind. The general rule applies. This further promotes its usage on tanks, but fear not, they took this into account and gave us type bonuses. If you're a dragon, you get 50% increased dodge along with this, which decreases the likelihood of enemy crits. If you're a cavalry class, you get freeze immunity. If you're armored, you get 50% defense boost instead of the 30, and if you're a flyer, the resistance boost goes up to 50% instead of 30. Backup, mystical, chi adept, and covert don't get anything extra here. The one thing interesting about these defense and resistance boosts is that they only happen in battle and don't reflect out of battle. Based on my testing, and this is confirmed, your total blue out-of-battle visible boosts can stack to a maximum of plus 20, and this factors in your emblem bonus and your skill bonuses as well as your buffs outside of battle. But in battle, Hector can go beyond that. Once again, I turned to my good friend Roltaire to help test this out, so I'll show you the screenshots as proof, but you can clearly see that out of battle, the displayed damage here is 21. For a little bit of a comparison and some math, his outside of battle defense was 27, with 15 bonus in blue stats, meaning that he has a total of 42 defense, 27 plus 15. And the enemy here has 63 attack, which is correct. When you subtract 63 by 42, that's 21. Before the armor initiated, he was hit by another physical attack, and because of Hector's adaptability, that added on 3 more defense to bring the total to 45. And the blue bonus buff stats to a total of 18, which makes the expected damage as well 18. In battle, we're seeing 5 damage, which means we have an extra 13 defense coming from somewhere and going up to a total of 31 total bonuses, which means Hector's skill stacks with the out-of-combat buffs. To do a simple calculation, all we have to do is multiply 45, which is the total defense, by 1.3 because of the 30% increase, and we get 58.5 total defense. Fire Emblem is actually rounding us down here because if the enemy's attack is 63 and our defense in battle is 58 as calculated, there's your 5 damage. This here is absolutely incredible because it escalates tank potential drastically, especially for armored units tanking physicals and flyers tanking magic damage because of the 50% boost instead of the 30. If all of this has your head spinning and it's a little bit hard to follow, just know one thing. Hector's buffs are separate from anything else and not influenced by any other skill or external buffs. They stack. You know what, maybe if I'm crazy enough, I'll show you guys the highest possible defense as a result of this in a video at some point. I'm looking up the numbers now, and let's just say it goes higher than the max HP stat possible. Hector's engage active skill is called Storm's Eye. Storm's Eye doesn't attack anyone, kind of like Great Aether works, but Great Aether ends up attacking. Storm's Eye is the opposite. It's a complete stance change and only functions for a single turn. During this single turn, though, opposite of Great Aether, it focuses on offense. So it grants you total break immunity, making it really good on non-armored bruisers, along with not allowing your foes to follow up and guaranteeing that you follow up without an HP threshold. Of course, me, being the person that I am, really wanted to test this with smash weapons and see if the quick riposte and the ability to always follow up works, and it doesn't. Even if you have quick riposte active, and you have the speed bonus, and you have this up, smash weapons just do not follow up no matter what. Trust me, I tried, I really wanted it to be a thing, it just isn't. Anyways, the problem with Storm's Eye is that it only works if you're using a sword or an axe, and as a matter of fact, it won't even let you select any other weapon to use, so you're locked into this. Due to this, you can't combo it with whatever weapon type you want, but it does give other movement types some type bonuses as well, so let's talk about those. Starting with dragons, it allows them to completely prevent a singular critical hit, which honestly seems a bit overkill when impenetrable is giving them 50% dodge already, but sure, whatever. Its best effect is on backup units, where it gives them 20% crit rate, and I'll talk about the utility of this in the build segment just after this. Covert units get 30% more avoid, nothing new to these units, but it'll make them completely unhittable on terrain to the point where enemies won't go for you on maddening. And that's it, just 3 types of these effects. Everyone else is stuck with the normal one. Hector also has 3 engage weapons. For the sake of completeness, I'm also going to go over the engage weapons, even though I found they're not really anything special outside of the early game. The Wolf Bale is his classic starting axe from FE7, and it is very near and dear to my heart, so I'm glad they kept it in. It's effective against cavalry and armored units, so again, some nice utility. He also gets Armods, which gives plus 5 defense and is effective against dragons, exactly like it is in FE7, so it's a solid tank axe. And lastly, they gave him the Rune Sword, which is really weird considering it's his one bane in FE7 being mages. This is a magic sword with a 50% life steal effect based on the damage he deals. I guess I can Nosfera tank with this and be a little bit viable on mage units. It's a little bit of a weird combo, but sure, why not? Maybe a mage knight can use this. So now we've finished reviewing pretty much everything on Hector's emblem ring in detail. So what are my preliminary recommendations based on this information? Well, the no-brainer is to stick this bracelet on a physical tank unit. Because he provides a strength and defense boost to their already high defenses, it helps them elevate to that next level, and with the way that Impenetrable adds stats based on a percentage, you want a unit with already high bases. So what else is there? Well, the obvious choice is the backup physical classes. There are going to be absolute juggernauts with this bracelet for the sole reason that their strength is already going to be pretty high. They're going to double, and they'll be guaranteed to only take 1 hit. but these units aren't generally built to tank, so what can we do with them? Well, remember the 20% crit that I mentioned earlier? Hector enables a build that will get you to almost 100% crit on any weapon. Yes, you heard me right. You want to run a max crit tomahawk? You got it. Let me explain. First, we need to start with engravings. In the Forge, we have a few options, but they're going to give us either 20% or 30% crit depending on whether you favor reliability or just raw crit rate. Keep in mind, if you don't hit, you won't crit, so I personally prefer to have a little bit of hit added onto my weapons myself, so I'll go with something like the Erica Engrave. It adds a whopping 40% hit and 20% crit without reducing your might, but does come at the cost of lowering your avoid and your dodge. Considering we're going to run a Vantage on this build, it doesn't really matter much anyways. You can also go with the Corn Engrave for 30% crit at the cost of 2 might as well, but the hit will stay as it is, and on axes, that's not the best. If you're using a sword, different matter. Camilla Engrave is also a good option that increases your might by 1 and your crit by 30 at the cost of increasing your weight, which, in Hector case, is a good thing anyways. But we don't get the hit rate boost here either, so there's that to consider as well. And last but not least, you can use Lynn, but she lowers might by 3 and weight by 2, so I really wouldn't recommend it. After we've gotten our Engrave critical, we need to look at our skills. There's really only one viable skill here to boost crit, and that's Wrath, inherited from Ike. It costs 2000 SP, so this won't come cheap, but there's nothing else you can do here if you want your bonus 30% crit when you've lost 30 HP. You'll also want to inherit at least Vantage Plus here for 1000 SP. The reason being is that it activates once you're under 50% HP and you don't want to play with fire too much. This is Hector, not Sigurd. Last but not least, you can factor in your character's innate crit, which will help boost this further. Now, you're probably trying to do the math and going 20% crit from backup, 30% engrave, and 30% from Wrath, and if the unit has 78% innate, we're close to 90, but that's still not 100%. Well, look, I didn't say any unit, I said any weapon, and the reason is because of a unit called Panette. You get Panette around the middle of the game, and she has a personal skill that gives you another 10% flat crit rate just for being below max HP, which synergizes a lot with Wrath. So yeah, there you go. Obviously 90% crit rate is still amazingly good and very reliable, so don't be discouraged from running this on any backup unit you want. Heck, if you really want to go Galaxy Brain and run this with Love and Sword plus 5, you could probably do that as well too, since magic is really good in this game damage-wise and most units have low resistance. Needless to say, any killer weapons you're using will go over 100% crit by a long shot, since at plus 5 they have 40% base, so you can actually get creative with your engraves there if you want. Anyways, I've harped on for too long about Hector, but he's definitely the most exciting unit out of the bunch, and the next two will be a lot quicker, I promise. Next up is Soren, and Soren is an interesting unit just by looking at him initially, but let's start from the top and then we'll work towards sort of working out how this guy works. I said work so many times, but we'll get to it. In terms of stat boosts, Soren gives you plus 4 to magic, plus 3 to dex, and plus 5 to res, which are all pretty great bonuses. The only downside is he doesn't boost speed, but given his skill set, as you'll see soon, this might not necessarily be a bad thing. Soren's first ability is a bit of a head scratcher. It's called Assign Decoy, and he gets it at level 1. What it does is that it gives an allied unit a status effect that makes them more likely to be targeted. Now, I have no idea what more likely means. We're going to have to wait for the data mine until it's confirmed. So again, this will be updated in the pinned comment when we have it, but this effect wears off once the designated unit has been attacked by enemies 3 times. It seems interesting to use with something like the Hector Bruiser build I detailed above, but otherwise it falls short compared to the rest of his kit. His second skill, Anima Focus, is learned at level 4 Bond and is very interesting since the effect changes depending on the element type of tome equipped. When using fire, you debuff the enemy's defense by 3. When using thunder, you lower their hit rate by 20%, and my personal favorite, when using wind, you reduce their move by 2. Why is it my favorite? Because it stacks with one of my favorite classes, Wolf Knight, who have the Hobble skill, which reduces enemy by 2 as well when using a dagger. So, if you want the ultimate hit and run team, you can use both of these on a single troublesome enemy, say a boss, to reduce its movement by 4 and pretty much remove the threat entirely. This is exactly the buff that Wind Tomes needed, and Soren makes them very viable. If that wasn't enough, his third skill is Keen Insight, and it increases effective damage dealt by 7 when you upgrade it to its max level. This is nice, again, for making Wind Tomes do more damage to flyers, who are honestly a threat in this game, and there are a lot of them, so it's just a solid passive overall. Block Recovery is also interesting since it has a speed-based chance of making sure that an enemy stays broken if it already is, and you attack it. Again, not sure what the exact percentage is until we get the proper data mine, but pinned comment when I do have the values is where you'll find them. Next are his 2 engage abilities. His first engage passive ability Flare, which is definitely the most interesting. When attacking with any tome, the enemy automatically has negative 20% resistance, but you also have a Nosferatu effect to deal 50% of the damage to you. His first engage passive ability is Flare, which is definitely the most interesting one. When attacking with any tome, the enemy automatically received a minus 20% resistance debuff, but you also have a Nosferatu effect to lifesteal 50% of the damage you do. This ability also has type bonuses. Mystical units debuff resistance by an extra 10% to a cumulative 30. Dragons deal double damage with critical hits, so I'm guessing that's 6 times the damage since it's already triple. And Chi Adepts recover 100% of the damage they deal. Looks like they really want to bring back awakening levels of main character Nosferatu tanking. Mage tanks, here we are, and oh, do I have a build suggestion for you at the end of this segment. This lets you create your own mage tank for 4 turns, and it can be really powerful. The second skill is Cataclysm, which is his active attack ability. It's an AoE attack that attacks enemies 3 times, once with each element, and it does 40% of what your normal damage would have been, but for each attack up to a total of 120%. It also changes effects based on your unit type here too. Dragons set the area on fire, which is an AoE in the plus formation. For Chi Adepts, it has a 20% chance of breaking them, and mystical units do 10 extra damage. 10% extra damage. One last thing before I go to the build section is Soren's weapons. He has a really interesting one actually that he gains access to, and it's called the Reflect Staff. We haven't seen this in the game yet, but I think this one is great. This gives a status effect to all allies within 2 spaces of the person engaged with Soren, and that status reflects 50% of magic damage done to you back at your enemy that is attacking you. It's just kind of funny and unique to me because it lets enemies kill themselves, and I just kind of chuckle to myself when it happens. I have a clip you're probably seeing on screen now as we speak, so you can laugh with me a little bit. Aside from the staff, Soren gets Rexcalibur, which is a pretty strong wind tome with high crit and bolting, which is, as far as I know, our only source of player-usable long-range magic in the entire game, so this is pretty nice too. Alright, let's talk about Soren's builds. Obviously, you want him to be on a magic unit that is casting wind spells to really make use of his movement -2 debuff on enemies. Giving this unit Canter is a great idea to enable a hit-and-run mage, and this can be done as early as you want. But if you want to unlock the true damage potential of Soren, you'll give him the strongest tome possible, Quick Riposte from Hector for 2000 or 3000 SP if you're feeling freaky, as well as Vantage from Leaf for 1000 for the 50% version. For the 4 turns he's engaged, this turns him into an absolute enemy phase monster where he's going to do a ton of damage while healing it and tanking enemies. I'd advise you to give the mage unit a Seraph Robe or 2 just to make sure they don't get one-shot, but yeah, this is a really old classic build that you can't go wrong with. It's a Fire Emblem tradition at this point. One more build that makes Soren completely immortal is if you inherit Holdout on him from Roy. This one is actually really good, as it benefits you at low HP values since you need to be above 30% HP for it to keep you alive at the 2000 SP version, but since you're dealing a lot of damage, you heal it all back anyways and it gets you above the threshold. It's pricey at the start, but a low price to pay for a completely unkillable unit for 4 turns. And that's pretty much it for Soren builds. He's pretty interesting, provides some utility, and I'm starting to see a little bit more focus on enemy phase between adding him and Hector to the game. Now, last but not least, let's talk about Camilla. Camilla has a fantastic set of stat boosts. At max bond, she gives plus 7 HP, plus 5 speed, and plus 4 res, which is really nice for mages that might struggle to double, like Ivy, or any mage in general for that matter. 5 speed is really nice. Anyways, in terms of her skills, Camilla, like Corin, comes with Dragon Vein, but Camilla's Dragon Veins actually have 2 variations to Corin's, and they change based on every movement type, so I'll go through the ones that are different. By the way, the Dragon types can still pick any vein they want here, so that's a staple just like Corin. Covert units are one of the changes, and here, instead of creating the fog that gives you dodge, they create smoke that decreases your avoid rather than the fog that increased it, which means your favorite Yunaka combo is gone here, unfortunately. And Chi Adepts, instead of creating the ice that blocks enemies, if you remember from the chapter where you got Sea Doll, it creates ice that increases movement. And if you're familiar with the Ice Dragons in the Tiki Paralogue, they were also in the Camilla Paralogue, then you'll know exactly what this is, and well, now you'll have it on your side, which is quite nice. Everything else is the same as Corin, so it's really just these 2 effects that have changed. The rest of Camilla's kit, however, is kinda sus. Camilla's second skill is a decisive strike, which seems kind of bad to me, honestly. If you land a critical hit, then at max level it deals an additional 10 damage to the unit after battle. Man, if I'm landing a critical hit on the enemy, which is generally not happening because my RNG sucks, but when it does, that enemy better be dead. This is really weird to me, and I would have changed it to healing to match the rest of her kit because it feels kind of wasted, especially on mage. Like, when are you getting this extra 10 damage after a crit, of all things? Her third skill, Detoxify, cures her of poison at the start of the turn, which is nice for tanking thieves and wolf knights, I guess, but otherwise super niche. And her last non-engaged passive is Soar, which heals her by 10 HP if she's waiting in fire, miasma, or any of those impeding terrains, and it also removes them from the ground. It's really nice in maps that have these effects, but it's also not super consistent either. Now, let's look at her engage skills, which, like, surprise, surprise, I'm gonna warn you now, they're not anything super amazing, just like her previous ones. Her first one is Soar, which is the best skill she has, which grants movement +2 and turns you into a flying unit, which is honestly really nice since you get to ignore terrain. It doesn't give you the insane reach that Sigurd does when he's engaged, but it's a nice little extension. This also has varying effects based on your movement type. Dragons gain the ability to deal splash damage to units within 2 spaces equal to 10% of their max HP. Flying units get 1 extra move added on top of the 2 for a total of 3, and Cavs get 2 extra move to take them to a total of 4. This skill is all about I like to move it, unless you're a dragon for some reason, then it's about damage, splash damage. This is arguably her best skill by far, like I said before, so yeah, I mean, using this, you only get it while you're engaged for 4 turns, so make use of it while you can. Lastly, let's look at her active engage attack skill, Dark Inferno. This is decently sized as an AoE and is centered around you and creates fire on the spaces that it does hit. It has a big pattern, and dragons get an extension to how far this reaches. If I was to describe it, it's kind of like a snowflake pattern. There's no other way for me to say it, that's just kind of what it looks like. Mystical units do 20% more damage, and Chi adepts make it add a healing glow effect instead of fire. For everyone else, this is a pretty average skill. It feels shoehorned in to make use of her Groundswell skill, coupled with Canter. It can work pretty synergistically, but honestly, out of the 3, Camilla definitely feels the weakest to use, skill-wise. In terms of her weapons, she gives you access to a magic-based axe, the Bolt Axe, with 1 to 2 range, but honestly, just forge 11 sword, it'll be much better than this. She has a lightning tome that is really weak with a brave effect on it inherently, which can be nice, and this one will quad, but again, a forged thunder with an Olwyn Dire Thunder Ring is probably better. And lastly, she has Camilla's Axe, which gives resistance +10 and deals extra damage if the foe has more resistance than defense. It subtracts the 2 and gives it as extra damage. This one is really weird because it's only going to be good against a few things in this game, like Griffin Knights, mages, maybe thieves. It has some decent physical attack, but honestly, any forged weapon will be better than these in the mid to late game unless you're spending time in Tempest Trials grinding those weird orb things out. In terms of builds, there's really not much that's creative that I can think of with Camilla. The first thing that comes to mind with me is to put her in Mage Knight. Mage Knight has a really nice class skill called Chaos Style that increases speed by 3 if using magic against a physical unit, and vice versa. And coupled with Camilla's base 5 speed, it increases that total to up to 8, which synergizes really nicely. Add that on top of the +4 movement she gives to Cavs while engaged, slap on Canter or Canter Plus, and you've got yourself a mobile magic cannon with the potential to quad with that lightning tome if you really want to do so. Give them a properly forged tome, and you're good to go. Another nice thing about Camilla, actually, is that she's not limited to being put on only mages like Soren or only physical units like Hector. Because of her focus on speed and the rest of her bonuses being nicely distributed, you really can put her on any unit you want. The engage attack might not be doing too much damage, but the rest of her kit will function regardless of unit type or move type, so she's pretty flexible, which is a big bonus for her, I think, over the other 2. I'll admit that at this point I'm blanking on any other ideas for Camilla, but she feels mostly like a utility bracelet where her effects will be secondary to what your main unit is already doing. So you can basically treat her as a lot of enhanced mobility and make sure your unit is as versatile as possible in that regard. And I guess if you really want, you can put her on your Chi Adept or your Dancer to get the most out of those ice tiles for the entire team, but that'll involve sacrificing a turn of Dance or a turn of staff usage, so you'll have to weigh the positives and negatives yourself and see what you want to do. It could be nice at the start of a map to get everyone moving more quickly, but that's just a thought from me. Random stray thought. Anyways, the script is getting super long and I'm exhausted already and don't even know how I'm going to edit and get this out in the next 6 hours, but I'll try my best. Let me know your thoughts in the comments and whether or not you're getting the DLC, and I'll see you all in the next video in a couple days. Peace.